Stewart students, and welcome to another math virtual learning lesson. I'm Mrs. Gravenese. Let's get ready to learn. Find a quiet place to work. Have out your pencil and math notebook and message your teacher if you need help. All right, we are moving along in chapter 12. Today's objective. I will be able to classify three-dimensional figures based on their properties. In previous lessons in this chapter, we looked at polygons, which are two-dimensional figures. Today, we're looking at three-dimensional figures. A three-dimensional figure has length, width, and height. Each of these, length, width, and height, is called a dimension. And we have three of them, which make three-dimensional figures. Let's take a look at an example and some more vocabulary words. Here is an example of a three-dimensional figure. And we are going to identify three different parts of a three-dimensional figure. The first one is a face, and a face is a flat surface. So the top is a face because it's flat. So is the bottom, so is the left, the right, the front, and the back. So all of these flat surfaces are called faces. An edge is where two faces meet. So all of these black lines and black dotted lines represent edges. It's where two faces meet. And lastly, a vertex is a point where three or more faces meet. The plural of the word vertex, so if there's more than one, is vertices. So you might see that form of the word throughout the lesson. Vertex, vertices. So the vertex is where you can think of it as these points at the ends. So prisms are three-dimensional figures. A prism has at least three faces that are rectangles. The top and bottom faces are called bases, and they are congruent parallel polygons. And we're going to take a look at that closer in a moment. But this blue figure right here is a rectangular prism. In a rectangular prism, the bases are congruent rectangles. So remember, the top and bottom faces are congruent, meaning they are the same size and shape. They're parallel, which means they will never meet, and they're polygons. And in a rectangular prism, the polygon is that they are rectangles. A rectangular prism has 6 rectangular faces, top and bottom, left and right, front and back, 12 of these black line edges, and 8 vertices or points. Let's take a look at the 3 types of prisms that you'll be responsible for knowing today. The first is the rectangular prism. We just went over that one. 6 rectangular faces, 12 edges, and 8 vertices. And then we have a triangular prism. Okay, a triangular prism has triangular bases. So the top and bottom are congruent parallel triangles. And this has a total of 5 faces, 9 edges, and 6 vertices. A cube is kind of a special rectangular prism. It is a rectangular prism, but we have square faces and square bases. Okay, it's just made up of a bunch of squares. So there are 6 square faces, 12 edges, and 8 vertices. And you could also call it a square prism, but we mostly call it a cube. Okay, like if you have a die that you're rolling to play a board game, that's a cube. All right, let's do a few practice problems. Describe the faces, edges, and vertices of each three-dimensional figure, then identify it. Let's count the faces for number 2 first. So let's keep a count. I have the top and the bottom. I have the left and the right. And then I have the front and the back. So that gives me a total of 6 faces. Now let's count the edges. I'd like to do the vertical ones first, just because. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's count the horizontal edges. 5, 6, 7, 8. And now the diagonals. 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have a total of 12 edges. 6 faces, 12 edges. And now let's mark the vertices. So these would be all the points where we have the faces meeting up. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's kind of, if you can visualize like the back square. 5, 6, 7, and 8. That would be like the front square. All right, so what do we have? We have 6 square faces, 8 of those blue vertices, and 12 of those red line edges. So what do we call that guy? Yeah, a cube. Very good. All right, number 3. Let's identify this guy, but first, let's count up all the faces, edges, and vertices. All right, let's do the faces. My congruent parallel faces are called the bases, and I see that they are triangles. I have one up front, one in the back. So that's 2 faces, the 2 triangles. And then I have a rectangle over here on the right. I have a rectangle on the left, and I have a rectangle on the bottom. So that's a total of 5 faces. Now let's count our edges. I'm going to start with the front triangle and go over those edges. 1, 2, 3. Now let's do the back triangle. 4, 5, 6. And now let's do the connecting pieces. 7, 8, 9. Okay, those connecting pieces are part of the rectangles. So I have 9 edges. And lastly, let's do our vertices. Starting with the front triangle. 1, 2, 3, and now the back. 4, 5, and 6. So this figure gave us 5 faces, 6 of those blue dot vertices, and 9 of those red line edges. So what would we call that? That's a triangular prism. Remember, it's a prism because it includes 3 or more rectangles attached to the bases, which are triangles. All right, I have 2 more problems for you to look at. Here we go. If you would like to copy them down, it's kind of hard to draw them, but you could pause the video, study them, write down how many faces, vertices, and edges there are, and then identify it, and then hit play. I'm just going to reveal the answers, and if you have questions, ask your teacher. All right, let's take a look. So for number 4, I have 5 faces, 6 vertices, and 9 edges. So that is just like number 3. It's a triangular prism. It's just set up differently. And for number 5, I have 6 rectangular faces, 8 vertices, and 12 edges. That is a rectangular prism. All right, hope you liked this lesson. And if you have questions, please feel free to message your teacher for more help.